Hey, so the other day I did a live Q&A broadcast and I got a lot of questions about something called hip dips. Do you guys know what that is? Well, I have a slight idea. I wasn't 100% sure, so I did a little digging, a little researching, and a little checking myself out to see if I have these hip dips. So it turns out that I have hip dips. And so do tons of other women because guess what? They are completely natural, but somehow that doesn't stop us from hating them. So what are hip dips? They are simply just that little indentation in the middle of our hips when we are looking at ourselves straight on. For some strange reason, whether it be cartoons, digital movies, superheroes, supermodels, Photoshop, we believe that those dips should not be there, that our hips should have this perfectly rounded curve. So, what causes these hip dips? Well, it's your anatomy, it's your bone structure, it's the shape of your pelvis. More specifically, it's the area or the space between the top of your pelvis and where your femur connects to your hip. Keep in mind that there are a few other factors that can contribute to having your hip dips appear more pronounced. So the top two contributing factors I can think of would be number one, storing excess fat in the top of the hip, that love handle muffin top region. And number two would be storing excess fat in the side of the thigh, that saddle bag region. So since most of us who have hip dips don't tend to store fat naturally in the dip region, having fat right above it and right below the dip is going to make that area seem more noticeable and more pronounced. I know what you're thinking. Can I get rid of it? Teach me how. It's not that simple of an answer, but I'm going to do my best to break it down for you now. Can you completely get rid of it? I don't think so. Can you minimize the appearance of them? I think so. You can't completely get rid of them because that's your bone structure and you can't really change your bones. I mean, I guess you could, but that sounds really invasive and not very practical. But if you have one or both of the factors that contribute to making your hip dips appear more pronounced, I suppose if you could get rid of some of that excess fat, that you could improve the appearance of them. Now the problem lies in that you can't spot reduce fat. This just means that if you have some localized fat stored in any one particular area, you name it, fill in the blank, lower stomach, saddlebag, love handles, back fat, whatever, you cannot spot reduce. You cannot just choose that one area in which to lose fat. Not possible. Okay? I know. It sucks. I get it. But listen, I don't make the rules, okay? But what you can do is you can drop body fat overall. And if you happen to have one area or two areas where you tend to store a lot of body fat, and if those happen to be those two areas, then you're in luck. You're probably gonna drop body fat there. And you probably then can reduce the appearance of those hip dips. But I must warn you that if you store body fat in your breasts and in your butt and also in those areas, you can't decide where you lose that fat, remember? So you very well may lose the fat in all those other areas before the areas that you're hoping to lose fat. And that's just the reality of life. We can't decide. Genetics decides where you lose and store fat first and last. And one more thing, because I know you're still wondering. Are there any exercises that I can do to either fix or improve the appearance of these hip dips? If you want my honest opinion, it is that I don't think so. I don't think that there's any exercise or any kind of muscle development that you can achieve that's going to completely get rid of these hip dips. Again, because it is a bone structure issue, not a muscular issue. But to be fair, let's take a look at the muscles around the pelvis, particularly the glutes. I think a fair argument you could make is that if you could somehow develop the glute minimus and medius enough so that those muscles would protrude out, that somehow that would minimize the appearance of the hip dip. And if that's what you want to believe, then by all means. I don't think there's any negatives, only positives to be gained from building strong glutes. But I think it's also fair to say that I've got some decently developed glutes. And if you'll notice in this next picture, that I still have them. And you could argue that because of my glute medius development, that maybe they appear more pronounced. Something to think about. So, the only exercises I think you should be practicing for your hip dips are compassion, self-love, and acceptance for yourself, because there's nothing wrong with you. Love you, ladies.